Okay. Hello and welcome. Today we are going to be deploying Vintage Story to Kubernetes. I'm going to be creating an Ansible role that will deploy this video game to my existing Kubernetes cluster. If you're not familiar with Vintage Story, it's a pretty cool, relatively not actually that new. It's new to me, I suppose. And usually on this platform, I focus on open source software and open source video games if I'm doing video games, that is. And this one is not technically open source, but it's close. So we're going to count it. Let's take a look here. That if you could read this yourself. This is their homepage at vintagestory.at. It's back up a step here. It's basically like Minecraft, but focuses a lot more on the survival elements. It reminds me a lot of the YouTube channel Primitive Technology, and basically in a Minecraft world. I've been watching the live streamer Gemini Tay play this game. Actually, that's the only exposure I've had to this game. And in watching, I think, the 6 live streams that she has done of this so far, I've decided that I will be playing this myself. And not only do I want to play the game, but I want to host a server and invite some people to join me in the game. I've not played it before, so it'll be a blind playthrough of the game, I suppose. And I don't think any of the people who I will be inviting will have played before either. I do host other games on this platform, and those are usually open to the public. This one is not going to be, though. This one will be invitation only. You can go to discourse.eom.dev if you're interested in seeing other games that I host where the public can join. But anyway, before we jump in here, let me double check my stream stuff. Okay. Market news at mastodon.social. Thank you for sharing the stream. I was just looking to see if could do that myself, and I haven't seen the post yet, so maybe it'll be here in a second. But anyway, so yes, usually I focus on open source games. Vintage Story is not fully open source. It's fairly source available, though. Let's take a look and stop fiddling with the screens. Apologize. There we go, finally. So, yes, it's not fully open source, but the developer, the name is Tyron. Here's Tyron's homepage, and there are a lot of things that are source available on this. If we go here, this is Tyron's GitHub page, and Anago Studios is the... Here we go. So now I haven't looked through all of these entirely myself just yet, so I'm not exactly sure what I'm looking at here, but these things are, if we open them up, this one's called the VS Vintage Story Survival mod. I guess I'm thinking about this from the perspective of playing Luanti or Mindtest, where you have the base engine and then the game is Mindtest game that you deploy on top of that engine, and maybe this is the way that works as well. I'm not exactly sure, but we can see it down here that it's proprietary software owned by the game studio, and the game studio is run by a few small, well, they're not individually small people. It's a small team of people, and it's a small team of developers who are working together to put this game together. And we can see there's actually a full list of the people about us. Yeah, so part-time, full-time, currently active developers. It is not a tremendously long list here. So yeah, point being, I see no reason why they should not keep this closed source and, be able to support themselves doing this. So that seems totally reasonable to me, and they also make it source available. Actually, if we dig into, I was reading about it somewhere else, so I'll go ahead and share. So they've created their own game engine, and it's a cross-platform game engine, and I don't know if it says it here, but yeah, and then I guess this is what I was saying, similar to Luanti, where we have this Vintage Story mod, the survival mod, that is the I'm doing a terrible job clicking around, but the Vintage Story Survival mod, I suppose, is the actual game itself, and here we can see the code. Point being, it's not open source in the strictest sense, but that's okay. We're going to play it anyway because it looks fun and it looks cool. So let's dive into creating our Ansible role. This is my Git server, and this is just how I like to organize things in my gaming organization. We're going to create a new repository, and we're going to call it Ansible role Vintage Story. Okay. And yes, we're deploying to Kubernetes. This Git application, all of the other games that I'm using, Owncast, where I am streaming right now, all of this exists in a Kubernetes cluster that runs right over there to my right. And so this Ansible role is going to be deploying this game server to Kubernetes. Now I'm going to create the repository, and let's go ahead and get it local as well. Okay. Zealous Levitt, hello, welcome aboard. We are, oh yeah, we are deploying Vintage Story. Okay. This is currently an empty repository, and to get things started, so I am filming this video right now, live streaming and also recording, and I need a place for this to live. Vintage Story is a video game. Here it is. Let's go to the home page. It is like Minecraft, but it focuses a lot more on the survival aspect of the game. So the crafting mechanics are different. The world is a lot more difficult to survive in. There are elements of starvation, and there are seasons to the game. There are also Lovecraftian, I guess, which is what Eldritch means. I'm not actually familiar with that term, but Lovecraftian horror themes. So those kind of interesting monsters. You're spinning up a new server for it? Gotcha. That's exactly correct. And I am doing that by, creating a Git repository. So the reason I'm doing this is that all of my websites, Owncast here, this Git instance, Vintage Story, eventually, it's all going to exist on this Kubernetes cluster running over to my right. And that exists, all of the software to deploy, taking that basic server, you install Debian on that server, and then this software infrastructure repository contains all of the Ansible roles to take that base server, give it, RAID arrays, and any applications it needs. It deploys virtual machines, and then will configure those virtual machines into a Kubernetes cluster and deploy a bunch of services. So this repository does that, and I'm creating a new repository to deploy Vintage Story as an Ansible role. And that Ansible role will be incorporated into this software infrastructure repository. We can see a few examples of that here. If we go down to roles, all of these ones that are eric.meehan.something, eric.omeehan.something, those are all submodules, a Git submodule. So a Git repository within a Git repository. And that's what we're doing right here. We are creating a new Git repository that will eventually be stored in here to deploy this video game. Cool. So I have this checked out locally, but what I want to do is... Now, I am live streaming, and I am recording the live stream at the same time, and I need a place for this video to live. And I could put it, in the README of this repository, but I haven't done that before. Usually what I end up doing is creating pull requests, and from those pull requests I will, I'll embed this video into the pull request, and so that's what I want to do here. Now, how am I going to do that? Since I have no content in this repository, I should probably just, let's see, sounds complicated. I think I'll stick with my basic Debian box with the Docker Compose installs for my services. Yeah, actually, this is very similar to Docker Compose. Tech at tagpush.app. Thank you for sharing the stream. But yeah, this is actually pretty much exactly like Docker Compose. If we skip ahead a little bit and look at this, this is the Docker container that I'm going to be deploying. And it's using this YAML configuration to deploy it. And what I end up doing is going to basically be exactly this code, just, you know, in this repository inside a repository thing. And it sounds complicated, but it allows me to have quite a professional environment in a sense. Like, I don't know if you're watching this directly on owncast.eom.dev, but you know, just running Docker containers on their own, it's not as elegant. You know, if one of those containers crashes, it doesn't necessarily come back, whereas Kubernetes will bring your containers back. It can also do different things with like auto scaling and stuff like that. But anyway, let's keep going. So we have this repository, and how should I do this? I don't necessarily need to create an issue. How do I want to do this? Basically, I need to create a pull request, and I suppose we can create an issue first. This feels kind of dumb. I'm not going to create an issue here. There is no issue to be described. So yeah, I kind of think a little bit too much about how I am. See you, Zealous. I can't blame you. Hey, Hylas, welcome aboard. Oh, there you go. Yeah, so I end up thinking too much about how I'm organizing these things. So, like, should I create an issue and then a pull request off of that? But no, there's no issue to describe, so I'm just going to go straight for the pull request. And what I can do is call it init. Create a new branch called init, and here we will put all of the stuff. And actually, we can kind of cheat a little bit here because I have made a number of Ansible roles like this before, including within that software infrastructure repository. Evolved. Thanks for joining, Hylas. Appreciate it. Yes, so in the software infrastructure repository, if we go down to roles, and actually that's going to bring me to this repository here. You can see we've switched to a new repository. And if we go down to our tasks, I can find one. Basically what I'm looking for is a deployment that I did in the past that uses a Docker container instead of a Helm chart. You know, if we look at one of these, let's find a good one. Mastodon, for instance. So this one is using basically a package manager for Kubernetes called Helm, where all of the resources that you need to define for a particular service in Kubernetes are kind of defined all in one package, and then you just, you know, put in these configuration values, and the service will come up in Kubernetes with all of the things that it needs, exactly the way that you want it. Usually, this is how I want to deploy my services. This is kind of the best practice way of deploying things in Kubernetes, is to use a Helm chart. Unfortunately, there is not a Helm chart for Vintage Story, and I don't have much experience creating Helm charts. There are tools to make it somewhat easy, but I've not really messed with those, so I am not inclined to try it for the first time right here and now. Instead, I am going to look at, I bet this MediaWiki one will work. Yes, so this MediaWiki Ansible role does not use a Helm chart. We can see that what it does is we create a namespace in Kubernetes, and then it deploys MariaDB. And Oh, this part's actually using a Helm chart, but we don't need that, so that's okay. Is this also a Helm? No, this is not a Helm chart. So here we're actually just deploying a Docker container. Only Kubernetes I have is from playing with True Charts Helm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Ideally, I would be using a True Chart. True Charts is just a like a repository of Helm charts. So like True Charts is distributing Helm charts. But they're the same thing. Yes, and this one is not using, so like a Helm chart will take all of the pieces that I have here. So like a deployment, a service, ingress rules. All of these things are like specific Kubernetes concepts, and you need to deploy all of these individual parts in order to get your service running, available, and with memory and all of the resources that it needs. So, what the application developer can do is create a Helm chart that will say, here are all of those resources, and here's how they should be configured, and here are all of the variables that you would use to tweak that. And, that's your Helm chart. But we don't have a Helm chart available for Vintage Story. So this is just, all of those resources defined one at a time for MediaWiki in this case. And so I can basically copy this. I'm just going to copy that. And, actually, I think I might have made a mistake here. Can you believe it? I've already made a mistake. I've done nothing. So Ansible Galaxy is, like a repository for Ansible roles in the same way that Helm is a repository for Helm charts. Ansible Galaxy is a repository for Ansible roles. And they offer a tool, this Ansible Galaxy tool, specifically with the command role in it, that is going to create a bunch of folders and files in this Git repository for me that will give me the basic structure of an Ansible role. I think since I already created it as a Git repository, though, I don't think it's going to like that. Yeah. Let's go ahead and put the force in there. Okay, let's now. That worked. Okay. So you can force it. Now this is a little bit annoying when you're doing, this is the text editor Kate. To refresh it. Um, Try that again. There we go. Okay, so we'll take this main task from Kate, zoom in. Okay, and we'll just adapt what I have for MediaWiki here to work for Vintage Story. So we will need a namespace in Kubernetes. We do not need MariaDB, so we'll just get rid of that. We will need this deployment, but these environment variables are pretty much all going to change. I'm going to keep one just so I have an example to remember the format. And it will have some ports. Okay, we will need a service. Let's go ahead and do a Control S. go. We actually don't need ingress. So ingress is an interesting thing. So if you take a look at some of the back end of my websites here, owncast.eom.dev, discourse.eom.dev, even Vintage Story once it's eventually available, you're going to see that all of them point to exactly the same IP address. And you might wonder, how does one host multiple websites on one port, that is port 443 HTTPS, from one IP address? So, the way this works is when someone types in something.eom.dev, first your internet browser goes out to some DNS. You exactly, Hylas. But for the purpose of the and actually I don't think I'm using that specific one, but I'm using the Nginx ingress controller. But yeah, that's exactly right. It's basically, you have an HTTP server that sits right behind your router, we'll say. And whenever someone types in something.eom.dev, your DNS is going to resolve that to this one IP address. That is my IP address. Your computer will connect to my server on port 443 to get to HTTPS. And the first thing that it's going to hit on my side is not traffic, as Hylas knows, but Nginx. And this HTTP server is kind of just your first layer website. It handles all of the encryption with Does it actually do that? I don't remember if it does that, because I have something separate that does that. We don't need to worry about that part just now. Point being, ingress is for when you're doing HTTP. And this is not an HTTP service. So let me finish the explanation that the HTTP server is going to first accept this request on port 443. It's going to look at the subdomain that is being requested. So is it owncast.eom.dev? Is it discourse.eom.dev, or whatever it is? And then this first HTTP server will forward the traffic to whichever one is behind it. So I can basically host infinite websites from one IP address using ingress and ingress controllers. But Vintage Story is not an HTTP service, so I do not need ingress and I do not need TLS. So just delete those. Now, let's see, which Docker container? Let me close some of these windows so I stop doing this. This one. This is the image that we are going to use, and we should probably pay attention to what this says. So put that there. Let's put this over here. That's kind of hard for you to see. I don't think there's a better way though. Yeah, let's reverse these. We'll survive with that. Okay, so we create our namespace. This is just a place in Kubernetes into which all of the related resources will go. It's basically an arbitrary thing. Our deployment, this is where we specify which Docker container we want to use. We're going to have one replica, Appleby Vintage Story, and the image we want is going to be Davidian/Vintage Story. There are multiple options here, actually. There's another one in particular that has a lot of upload or downloads. This Davidian one has about 10,000, and then this one here, Z-Sautum also has about 10,000 downloads. When I go into the actual profiles of the users, though, Z-Sautum only has this one Vintage Story repository, whereas Davidian has multiple repositories, and some of them are quite popular. So that leads me to believe that this one is going to be well maintained and is made by someone with a lot of experience. So this is the one that I have chosen to use, and if it doesn't work, we have another option. So let's see. What do I need? Do I want to tell it to use a certain amount of memory? I don't think I do. I think I kind of want it to just use whatever it wants, so I'm going to remove that. And the ports. This one is actually on port 42420. Okay, now, as I was saying, with the ingress and HTTP uh, services that are using HTTP, we have the option of, well, we're going to be using this ingress controller. So the traffic comes from the outside world to the router. Router says this is port 443, so I'm going to forward that to the ingress controller. That ingress controller is going to have a IP address on the network, its own unique IP address, and then it is going to forward things using internal Kubernetes addressing. So this cluster IP service, this means that the service can only be addressed by other services running within the Kubernetes cluster. And the ingress controller is running within the cluster. So when you're using HTTP services, only that ingress controller will have an IP address, and then it will route within the cluster using this cluster IP stuff to get to the other services. But again, Vintage Story is not an HTTP service, so we need to give it its own IP address so that we can forward traffic from the router directly to Vintage Story. So instead of that, this one is going to be, what's the phrase? Local? No. What's the phrase here? I'm not remembering. Local, not local. Cluster IP, load balancer. Yes, load balancer. My memory. Okay, load balancer. So here I have something called HW load balancer, hardware load balancer. It's another service that runs in Kubernetes that allows me to use this kind of load balancer service, which is going to give Vintage Story its own unique IP address on my local network. This can be a bit finicky to set up. You know, if you don't have that hardware load balancer on your Kubernetes cluster and you're not running Kubernetes in a cloud environment, you're probably not going to use load balancer. You'll probably use node port, which is going to pick a random port on the host machine, and it was going to forward that port to this service port here. You have to do some weird network routing in order to get that to work, and it's not quite as fancy as load balancer. So I'm going to be using load balancer. Now, that's basically all we have to do. To at least get up and running, I need to look at the settings though. Let me double check. Yeah, there's no environment variables that are of particular interest, so we're actually just going to delete this. Take a sip of tea. Okay, so this is going to get our basic Vintage Story server up and running. We are actually missing a few things here, in particular data storage. So at the moment, this is only configured to store the game on the actual Docker container. And so if that Docker container dies or gets restarted, our whole world will be reset. So we need persistent volume claims on this Vintage Story server. So let's get that right out the gate. Why is there not one here? That seems strange. There should be one. Something's going on there that I'm not going to look into at the moment. So let's see. Here we go. Volume claim. And let's give it more than that. I don't think we need a lot. Give it 64 gigs. That is kind of a lot for this, but 32 is probably enough. What do you think, Hylas? 32 or 64? This is for total data storage. 32's got to be enough. Okay, so this is our persistent volume claim. This is where we will store all of our game data, and we need to attach this to the thing. Okay. And oh yes. And where does the data go? Slash game data. So sometimes there are problems where once I mount this persistent volume claim, there are supposed to be things already existing in this, slash game data directory, and once I mount this PVC, that stuff might not be there anymore. So we might have problems with that. So something we're going to have to test. That's okay. And also, maybe this isn't how I want to do it. So if we look more closely at the instructions that we see here, what they're going to say is basically, put our persistent volume claim on this slash game data directory. And then once we start the container, you can enter that directory and you can find this, serverconfig.json and edit that and restart your server. And that will just exist in your persistent volume claim. And that's, that works. But in Kubernetes, you don't really want to go in and edit things like that. It would be better if we could have the serverconfig.json and maybe even this playerdata.json available as files or templates available in here. So probably a template would be the best for this serverconfig.json. So what I need is a base copy of serverconfig.json. I wonder if it's available in the repository. This seems unlikely. Well, in any case, we can run the Docker container locally, and we can just get that file. I'm just going to do Docker run. It's going to pull it. And can I just copy and paste easily from Docker? Yeah, Docker CP. Wonderful. Go. So if I put it into files, it will be a, I can copy and paste it from the repository in this, using this Ansible role. I will be able to copy and paste the file as it is onto the container in Kubernetes. If I put it in as a template, then I can edit it and change the values to have placeholders so that someone else can come later and define their own values and reuse this to change this, the deployment. So it's a little bit more work, but I think I will go ahead and do that. So we're going to put it into templates. And we're going to call it .j2 because it's a template. Let's refresh here. There we go. Okay, so this is our template for Vintage Story, a Vintage Story server configuration. At the moment, it has all default values. And I'm actually kind of tempted to convert this as is into. So if we look, this file is a JSON, and we can easily convert a JSON into a YAML. And so I can actually take this as is. We'll just put it into a converter. Looks a lot better on my screen. I'm going to copy that. And then in our defaults, we can paste it. So now all of the values of a default Vintage Story server are saved right here in this YAML format. These are the default values that our Ansible role is going to use when we use it without adding any additional configuration. Let me make the chat visible again here. Yeah, so if we use this without any additional configuration, our Ansible role will, let me rephrase that once more. If we do not override these values, then by default, Ansible here will deploy a configuration that has the exact same default values as Vintage Story already does. That sentence did not come out perfectly clearly, but I think you get what I'm saying. So here, what I need to do is change all of these to variable places now, which is kind of annoying. I think I'll do that off screen on a separate issue because it's a little bit tedious, but what I do want is to copy this. And so I need another example. Basically an example of a config map in Kubernetes. So do I have one of those on hand? Let me see. Search for it. No. I can't actually remember of any. Um, let's just Google a new one. Um, okay, let's get an AI to generate an example because that's definitely the easiest way. What? Let's just go back to this first example. What am I trying to do here? I'm basically trying to take this file that exists in this template here as part of my Ansible role, and I want to deploy this within Kubernetes as the configuration file for Vintage Story. So there are two things that need to happen here. First of all, this /game data, we need to be a little bit more specific about where we are mounting this. And then I also need to create, I'm pretty confident config map is the thing I'm looking for, a config map of this template to mount as a file also onto the container. We'll see it all together in a moment. Let's see. On this container, where is the game data? Let's see. Let's go back over to our container. So where does the game world get saved? So the config file that we are looking for goes to slash game data slash vs slash server config. Let's go do there can sometimes be a little bit of difficulty when you're trying to do Kubernetes with persistent volume claims and config maps mounted within those persistent volume claims. So as I have it right now, this slash game data mount path is going to include, from what I can see, our backup saves, our backups, our saves, our player data. I'm guessing the world, our saved world exists in this slash game data folder. And since the server config is a subpath of this slash game data, I'm expecting to run into an issue where once I deploy this thing, this persistent volume claim to this container, I wonder if these things are not going to be here anymore. And I also wonder if I'm going to have trouble putting my config map where I want it. So let's just try it. Am I remembering my Kubernetes stuff correctly? So the way I've done this with Luanti in the past, I skipped over the part where yeah, actually let me pull up the Luanti role. That would probably be informative. Oh, I do have a Helm chart for it. So, okay. And well, anyway, on this one, what I end up doing is just deploying it, and then I manually edit and copy over the file. I do copy the file into the Git repository, and so that's kind of the easiest thing to do here. Trying to do this stuff where I can set it up. I can do that later. So let's progress. We have our persistent volume claim. It goes on to /game data. I guess that should be fine. Let's look at the configuration file and see these default values are. I kind of want to use the template thing. Sorry, I'm not being clear about what I'm doing here. So the idea is this video is going to exist in the pull request that I make to initially create this repository. So it's partially for entertainment purposes, partially for educational purposes, and partially for documentation purposes, just so I can see what I've done later. So I'm aware that I'm not being particularly clear at the moment, but it's not much I can do about that, unfortunately. I'm trying. So yeah, I kind of do want to get this figured out a little bit. Use a config map for setting configuration data separately from application code. For example, imagine that you are deploying an application that you can run on your own computer and in the cloud. You write code to look in an environment variable named database host. Locally, you set that to localhost. In the cloud, you set it to refer to a Kubernetes service, blah, blah, blah. Config maps can be mounted as data volumes. Config maps can also be used by other parts of the system without being directly exposed to the pod. For example, config maps can hold data that other parts of the system should use for configuration. The most common way to use a config map is to configure settings for containers running in a pod in the same namespace. Yeah, that's what I want to do. I want to mount it to the system. Okay, that's attaching a non-existent config map. Now I need to create the config map. Uh, Namespace. Now this is the part I don't understand. How do I go from the file that I have, the template, to I want this data to just be the template. So that's what I need to find. These are the moments where I actually really like AI because I don't want to read all that. So Sometimes it's so weird what it says though. Like that doesn't make any sense. Let's ask the smarter one. Right? Um, Verify me. um, how am I gonna do this? I'm kind of feeling. I don't think I'm gonna. I'm not feeling this. This is weird. It's saying that I have to like render the template and then copy its values into this. That's not gonna work for me. I'm just gonna manually copy this over because I'm going to be a bit lazy tonight, and let's just get it running. And it should be in this PVC anyway, so that'll work. I think I can close this. Okay. Um, let's see. Okay, I guess that turning this into an Ansible role uh, made it no longer a Git repository, and that's fine. We can get in it. Let's do this. I want to add just the README. Let's make an initial commit. Go. So now over here in the actual repository, we should have our basic README, and that's it. So now over here, all of the other stuff is not yet tracked. So I'm going to check out that branch again. Let's go ahead and add all of this. Okay, so we've created a new branch now. And refresh this. We'll create a new pull request. Okay. Yeah, and this is where this video that I'm currently recording is going to live, in this Ansible role. So I'm going to create a comment in here. I don't know that I'm going to click the button to publish this just yet, but let's use this one as an example. This HTML code for a video. Steal that. And whatever I end up calling this one, it's going to be 9, 11, 20. It'll be something like that. This video will be embedded right here in the pull request itself. And I might want to start the title with work in progress. I don't know that I want to pull the trigger on this just yet, though. So I'm not sure. Like, do I want to end the stream and have this file ready and then create the pull request so that the video just appears perfectly, or should I write something else in here and add the video later as a separate comment? I think that might be the better idea. What should I say here? No, I kind of like it having the video. Kind of a lot of things that I need to think about all at once, like the server that I'm trying to set up, the methodologies to best set it up, and also the presentation of the materials that I'm creating in terms of videos. So, like, the end result of it is that the video, this is probably really weird to watch. You probably have, like, very little idea of what's going on in my mind right now, but that's okay. Hang on a second. Give me 1 second here. Okay. This is more confusing than I wanted it to be. I think what I'm going to do is move over to this is kind of annoying. Okay, we're going to move over to software infrastructure. We're going to not remote. We're going to add the submodule. We're going to go ahead and do that. And when we do so, it's only going to add the main branch. And we're going to add it to roles. Okay. Now, we look at the get status on the branch main, so it should only have the README. So here in software infrastructure, I'm going to do something. What I want to do is, instead of editing the files in my Ansible role Git repository directly, I have now checked it out here in software infrastructure, and I'm going to edit it over here as a submodule. So I'm going to, we're going to check out init. Yeah, and now all our files are here. So this allows me to edit my files directly within the submodule, and then I can deploy these files as I am editing them and as I am testing them without having to make a commit in the repository, push it up to the repository, and then pull it back down and do all this work in between every single change that I make. I can just edit it directly as a submodule, and then once I get it to the state that I want, I can then make a commit in the submodule, push that to the Ansible role repository, and we'll be good to go. So I'm actually going to open a new folder here. We're going to open software infrastructure. Now, when we go to our roles, here's where we're going to edit things. I didn't save that. That's annoying. Let's just do that. No, I shouldn't have done that. We should have done it over here. Anyway, let's try to focus. I'm doing a terrible job of focusing at the moment. I'm tempted to just deploy this as is and see what is there, see what I see. Uh-oh. Yeah, a lot of chat has been missed. Let me take a look here. Yeah, I'm not sure why the chat on the screen freezes. Sorry about that. But once I click back over into the window, it'll suddenly start up again. Hey, ET, thanks for joining. And what's this? Oh, you have a self-hosted converter. I'll have to open that separately. Let's see. The chat will stay good for a little while, but I don't have the browser source add-on for this. I'm not sure what I'm looking at here at the moment. And given I just said I was going to try and stay focused, this is the opposite of that. But also, I will say, Hylas and Purple Jelly Beans, thank you all for sharing the stream. I appreciate it, and liking it. Anyway, let me try and actually focus here for a moment. Let's see. The tool about JSON YAML convert. I had a feeling it was, but sometimes trying to read, there's a lot of text in front of me here, so Okay, I'm kind of just want to deploy this and see what it looks like. I'm going to end up deleting the namespace anyway because this will just be a test, and I'm not going to expose it to the outside network. I'm not going to port forward my router to this, so it'll just be for me. We can go ahead and try it, I suppose. So here in not main.yaml, test.yaml. This is a this is an Ansible playbook as opposed to an Ansible role. The Ansible playbook is going to be the thing that you execute, and the playbook can call the roles. So software infrastructure contains the playbooks, and I take each individual service and create an Ansible role for that service. That's exactly what we're doing here for Vintage Story. And this allows me to, within the software infrastructure repository, I could say I want to just deploy this one role. And then down here, namespace, PVC, deployment. Okay, so it should be up and running now. Okay, it's creating. Give it a second. Let's actually look at the PVCs while it's doing that. So far, so good. Yeah, okay, so this is what I was worried about. Over here on the right-hand side of my terminal, I'm SSH'd into my PowerEdge T640, which is the underlying server that has this Kubernetes cluster. And the PVC is going to be, hello, Keen Switch, thank you for joining. The PVC that this thing has created exists on that PowerEdge T640. And so what I have done is just, CD'd into that directory that is the PVC, and I am listing its contents. And what I'm finding is that there's nothing in it. At least there wasn't when I just did it. Let's double check the pod. Still not running, so maybe we should just give it a second, and maybe it'll populate that PVC in a moment. I'm a little worried that it won't, though, and maybe it's waiting for that. Let's check the logs. Maybe it's just downloading it or something. We're just gonna have to wait a second to know. No, we're not. Oh, the config map. I forgot about that, so. Hey, Logan. The crowd reacts. It's fine. See, this is what I was talking about, though. I've made this small mistake where in our deployment I say I forgot to. Wait, this is the wrong file. So here in our deployment, I forgot to remove this config map thing, and so I need to do that there, and I need to do that there. And if I were still working in the original Ansible role, then I would need to, at this point, make a commit, push it up, and then come back to software infrastructure and update the submodule. And that's kind of annoying when you need to make a lot of little changes just to tweak something and test it. So instead, what I'm doing is editing directly in the submodule, and I'll just make all the tweaks I need. Once I finally get it to the version that works, I will then be able to just commit and push from there. So let's see. Very warm welcome. Not to buy a Stratum 1 time server. I don't think we're going to convince you not to do that. It's we're more likely to convince you to do that. Anyway, let's see. Yes, so I've just deleted that namespace. It's gone now, and we can just deploy it again, and we don't have to do any commits or anything like that. Make sure that that's actually done. Should be nothing. There we go. Okay, so we can try this again. What IDE is this? This is Kate. I'm a little kind of 50-50 on it. I really want to use NVChad. That's the one that I really like, just in NeoVim. But with the current version of Debian that I'm on, it doesn't support the version of NVChad that's really good. So, or actually, I don't think it supports NVChad at all. So NVChad requires something that's newer than the latest version of NeoVim that this allows for. And I don't really like, what's the common one? Visual Studio Code, because it's like closed source Microsoft stuff. I don't want to use that. And yeah, so Kate's the one that I've been using recently. It's pretty good. I do generally like it, but I will definitely take suggestions if you know of a better one. Let's check out our pods. That one's already running. And now we have our VS folder with all our stuff in it. So it is populated. So that's looking pretty good. VS Code has been getting enshittified as much as I have liked it classically. Yeah, that's the thing is, and also like, it gives the impression that it's open source without it actually being open source, and it does all this like weird stuff in the background. I don't know. It's like it's Microsoft stuff. Never going to be my favorite. Let's see. So if I launch Vintage Story, is our stream going to suffer? And if so, how much? Try and keep it in a windowed mode and just see if we can find the server. It is no longer in a windowed mode. Okay. Okay, there's our game. So, see ya, Hylas. Thanks for joining. We might do some Super Tux Kart in the future too, so. Anyway, let's see. I want to check out the IP address of this. (161). Okay, we need to add ourselves to the whitelist, and that's fine. I was expecting that. Let's go back to this and see. How should we do that? kind of like the music. You can let me know if it's too loud, but we need to add ourselves to the whitelist. Setting startup commands to log in. Okay, so I think this is where I need to edit the config file. And this is where it gets kind of confusing again because, okay, what I should do, this is how I would do it in Luanti. And this is not really the best way to do it. I'm happy to admit that. But come over here to our actual, this is what our, this is our template. I don't want to do too much editing here because this is the actual repo. Here we go. Perfect. So here I am going to set some of these values to be what I actually want. So what I want with doing this as an Ansible role and doing this as a and doing specifically this config file as a template is to set all of these to placeholder values and allow this Ansible role to use variables to configure whatever kind of server you want for this game. At the moment, setting up those config maps and things is a little bit out of scope for at least right now. We've already been on for an hour doing this, so I'm just going to manually edit this file so that it has the values I want. I'm going to manually copy that over to the PVC, and then I'm going to manually restart the server. And that will give us the effect that we want, even though this isn't really the best practice. This is just going to be the easiest way to do it for now, and I will create an issue on this Git repository to mention setting this up as an actual template and a config map. So that's what we're going to do. Fine. I guess that MOTD is fine. We are looking for that startup command. How do I find my player UID? Maybe we just turn off the whitelist for this first one and we'll do that. And then I'm going to copy paste this. Whoops. Not slash. And then just replace that. Then we'll come back over here. And we're going to restart this server. Should I just delete the pod? That's probably the easiest way. There's probably a graceful way to shut it down and bring it back, but once this pod comes back up online, the config changes that we just uploaded to the PVC over there on the right should take effect. The whitelist should be turned off, and I should be able to log in using that local IP address. Give this a second, see what it does. Uh-oh. Not like my server URL, so I guess we'll just try that again. Restart on its own. Let's just go ahead and delete it. There we go. Now it's running. So I want to live stream all of my time in this world on this server. And as such, I'm probably not going to use the actual server that we end up deploying and seeing here today. Yeah, here we go. Okay, we are in. That is excellent. Look at this guy. Isn't he gorgeous? these weird skin tone colors. um, yeah, a lot of lag at the moment because I'm live streaming. But okay, we are in. So oh yeah, look at how slow this game. Oh my god. Well, there you go. That's the game. Game over. That was pretty good. I'm glad that happened. So, okay. Let's just go ahead and quit the game here. So let's see. Okay, nothing there. That's my player UID. I don't know what a lot of that stuff is, but okay. So now what? So I suppose over here what I want is to there we go. Add player UID. Okay. Okay. Let me go ahead and this is our default values. Let's see. Original. So again, this file defines the default values for all of the variables within a role. This. So yeah, this defines all the default values, and these are the defaults that came from the default file. Some problems with it are that, I have my server UUID in here, this server identifier. This should not be the same for every single server in the world, so that's going to need to be changed. But otherwise, I want to change all of these to be actual placeholder values. And then I want this main task. Yeah, this main task needs to take this template and make it a config map. So yeah, I think this is actually sufficient for right now. I'm not going to keep the... Hold on. I'm not going to keep the existing namespace. So I have the, like, my player UUID. I know I can get in and things like that, but I think what I want to do now is basically close this initialization pull request and set up a few issues for another set of pull requests tomorrow to get everything kind of set up and finalized for a actual deployment before I open the server up for people to join. Let's see. I'm going to just have to put the video in a different comment because this is getting a little confusing to not have it in here immediately, I think. Oh, I think it's still doing okay, actually. Let's just refresh. What happens if I refresh? It didn't work. Man, this is like a lot of things to think about all at once. Like how to set up the server and present the material. So am I just going to close this pull request immediately? Okay. Yeah, okay. This is getting a little confusing for me, so I think I am going to end the stream here, and I am going to put the recording in the comment of this pull request, and then I am going to create some separate issues to make this config map, or make this template into a config map on the actual thing, and use variables here. Yeah, this has been a kind of a confusing one for me, to be totally honest. but it's more for documentation purposes so that, in the future, when I come back and look at this first pull request, I have a very interactive video to look at to see what I was doing when I made this. But yeah, I'm going to finish out the stream and create this pull request. I don't think I need to set it up as a work in progress because this is ready to go as is. And I'm going to create some issues to make those improvements. I will probably try and complete those issues early tomorrow and get this server up and running tomorrow. And yeah, I think that's what we'll do. And then this should be available for people to log in and play over the weekend. Yeah, cool. All right. So yeah, I'll end it here and I will see everyone in the future. How you guys doing? Is everyone doing all right? I don't know that this is exactly the best format for glad to hear it. All right, guys, cool. Well, thanks for joining. I will see you all in the future. Toodaloo.